And the third letter, actually, which is the first in the packet, was in response to those two letters from Representative Ferrante and Senator Tarr to Governor Patrick, just seeking to see if we can get some relief from the governor. As it stands now, this was the last official communication from any elected officials. Mayor Kirk, you look like you're getting ready. Would you like to chime in? Go right ahead. Okay, I'm all set.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the question on any further action that the school committee would take or could take, you know, my only thought is that as even the national debate on charter schools heats up and there's a lot of focus on it, one of the things that I hear sometimes is that, well, charter schools in New York State are great, or in Ohio, or in some other state, but the funding models in those states are completely different. And I think that, you know, wherever this Gloucester charter school ends up, the school committee could adopt a resolution that says that this school committee will continue to advocate for educational funding that is fair to the children in Gloucester and throughout the Commonwealth. And that's whether it's the charter school or vocational school or the Chapter 70 formula, we in Gloucester, I don't think, can ever take our eye off of that ball, because we are on the punishing end of the funding formulas just by virtue of the way that it's set up in Massachusetts, and I won't go through the details of that. I think everyone here is certainly familiar with it. That would be my only suggestion on a specific action for the committee to take, would be to adopt that type of a resolution.
Bill.
I have just a couple of brief things to comment on the first document that Superintendent Farmer described, and specifically that was the document to the Chair, Maura Banta, and Commissioner Chester from the joint committee, Senator Foley, Senator O'Leary, and Representative Waltz. And my two comments on their document was, first of all, on the public hearing location, I would like to also comment that we, through the discovery of public records during the process, learned that the charter school office, was concerned about not sending a person to our hearing on December 8th. And we have 3 or 4 comments electronically that we received that were very clear that they knew that they were supposed to be present on that day based on their correspondence back and forth. So I would like to add that in terms of why we feel like this process was not fair and transparent. The other thing that I wanted to add to that particular document was there was another component that we learned through our public records request, and that was something that we learned on the 3rd attempt to obtain the information, and that was that the charter school office, as chaired by Mary Street, had come up with a document, a 6-page document of an analysis of the Gloucester Commonwealth Charter School, and at which time they were very clear that they were not recommending the charter school based on many of the same issues that our citizens had brought forward at that December 8th meeting when no voting board member was there. So the fact that the charter school office is paid by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to look at the viability of these applications, made a recommendation not to recommend, and that piece of data was something that was taken by Commissioner Chester and not shared by the voting member, to me, is an example, another example of the lack of transparency. And I feel that those are 2 components that really were lacking in this assessment that are important for the people of Gloucester to understand, particularly not just Gloucester, but throughout the Commonwealth, because other communities are going to have to go through similar processes, and we really feel like this wasn't a fair assessment of this application's viability. So those are my two comments that I have about that particular document. The other thing that I wanted to mention, and that comes in respect to the second document, which is the one by Mara Banta and Mitchell Chester, and that is, as they're talking about this upcoming meeting on September 22nd, which is the next board meeting of which the full Department of Elementary and Secondary Education gets together. And they have agreed at that meeting to begin a discussion about an amendment based on the Joint Commission's findings, that they want to come up with all the ways to make sure that all these issues don't happen in the future. So at that particular meeting, what they're going to be talking about is all the problems that happened and what they will do so it will never happen again. But what isn't scheduled to happen on that meeting on September 22nd pertains to all of the decision of the board members who now have to listen to the recommendation of the chair and the commissioner without self-assessing their own vote that they took based on the fact of what they learned. So I would suggest that we do whatever we can. We need to get over this. We need to stop looking at this as being an unfair process and move on. There's everyone here that realizes that it's time to move on. However, there's still closure that we need, as I believe, as a school committee and as citizens of Gloucester. And I would feel better if there was a way that we could influence the board for that September 22nd meeting. So we ask them to please, we would like you to deliberate on the fact that, you know, we'd like you to put this on the table, the application for the Gloucester Community Arts Charter School, and specifically discuss how they felt about the process. Because they're sitting there as a board with a document that said, do not recommend, that was never shared with them. And I believe that in true transparency, that's a piece of a very pertinent piece of information that they all had a right to look at, and they didn't. So my thought would be for us to push that instead of them just talking about amendments of how to make it look in the future and all the things that they learned from Gloucester, and it's great that they did this hearing here so they know what they can do to streamline it in the past. But in the meantime, our community needs to move on. And we're still feeling like this wasn't fair, this wasn't, it wasn't transparent. And I would like to see that board deliberate and discuss the specifics of Gloucester. And I'm not sure how we can get that on the agenda, but I would like to see if maybe if there was consensus among our school committee that we, as citizens in school committee that would like to be able to move forward, we want to see this particular decision deliberated and discussed one last time. Because we need to move on, but this was definitely an unfair process.
Anybody else? Mrs. Healy.
I completely agree with the idea that we need to move on. I am totally incensed that Chairwoman Banta and Commissioner Chester feel that the June 8th meeting would suffice to have a public hearing on this, where we had such stipulations on what could be discussed. Granted, we did have a board member here finally, but that presentation that we had in December was in no way shown justice in what was discussed on June 8th. And if there's any way, as much as I agree with asking the board to deliberate in September, I'd like to try to see how to influence getting a public hearing here so that the people of this community who feel that haven't been done justice could be listened to. You know, yes, we need to move on, but it doesn't change the fact that we still can't afford the school. And unless we've really